Hi there, everyone, and a very happy Thursday to you today. I hope everybody is having a good start or finish to your day today. My name is Sara Newman, and I'm really excited to be with you for the next maybe hour or so as we play with Altenew stamps and some other really fun new supplies from our friends at Altenew. So thank you so much for joining. The lovely Orem will be with us behind the Altenew badge today. And so Orem is going to be putting in the information as I keep talking about various stamps and things that we're going to be playing with today. I see that Sue has joined us. Hi, Sue. It's nice to see you dropping in as usual. One of my favorite parts of Thursday night when I'm doing these lives is I get to see some of our friends that join us every week. And it's great to see you all. So I see Cece is here, Penny is here. I saw a couple of other names flash by really quickly. So if I didn't catch you, a big hello and a welcome. It's just great to see everyone. And I hope you are all doing really well. So Orem will be jumping in probably with a reminder that if you are new to Altenew Lives, you may not know that by watching you are eligible for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store. And the way to put your hand up for that is to share this video while we are live. And to do that, you just need to post down in the comments below and let us know that you shared and let us know how you shared, whatever method you used or wherever you reposted. And then Orem will work her magic and she will choose someone for $15 at the Altenew store at the end of the session. So you have the entire time to do this if you would like to. So again, a great big welcome. Generally, what I like to do for these live videos is I'll show you the products that I'm going to be using today. So you get a kind of an overview of what we're using. And then I'm going to tilt down the camera and we'll just jump right into some demonstrations. And today I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, at least 3 card projects. We'll see if we get to a 4th one tonight. We'll see how quick I am. And hopefully we can chunk through everything. Even if we don't get to all of the more extensive demos, I'll be able to show you the finished projects. So thanks to everybody who has been joining us. And again, thank you for sharing. Do post down below how you are sharing. And you can be in for $15 at the Altenew store. Okay, so let's get started first of all with the products that I'm going to be using today. And I'm going to show you I'll show you the biggest one first. So take a look at this. I'm so excited about this. It's not the stamp, it's not a die. It is the Moroccan Mosaic Creative Cutouts, and it's huge. It's 12 by 12, as you can see. And these are laser cut sheets. So I'm going to kind of hold this up so that you can see it is absolutely just beautiful. It's quite intricate. I mean, it's laser cut, which means it's going to give you that beautiful fine detail, but it's also on a nice sturdy weight of cardstock. So it's not so delicate that you have to be terrified of it. It does come on this like nice sturdy cardboard backing, which is how I'm storing mine too, by the way, just to keep everything flat and tidy. So this is the Moroccan Mosaic, and we're going to be using these. Now, as I mentioned, it's 12 by 12, which means you could just take one of these sheets and put them onto a background paper if you do scrapbooking, and you'd have a beautiful background. So we'll be using that for cards. I'm gonna cut it apart, which I almost felt a little bit bad about, but then it was so much fun. It looks so great. So I'll be playing with that. Also, the Retro Plantines. Now, I'm gonna guess that I'm pronouncing that correctly. Plantines. It's not plantains. It's not like those banana-shaped vegetables that you see at the grocery store sometimes. These are really fresh and very modern leaves and botanicals. A couple of sentiments in here. This is a smaller stamp set. This is a 4" by 6". So it's going to give you some smaller images, but they look fantastic when you use them alone or when you group them together. Now, of course, the other thing with these is that you've got a little information, inspiration folder in here. And I love this. Now, the Mod Vases is a separate stamp set, but if you have a stamp set that's got vases, this is a really perfect combo. Here's another great idea that I just love. And this is also combining the stamp set with another stamp set called the Charming Doodles, and that's going to give you that big flower here. So you can see that this is a set that can stand on its own, but can also mix really nicely with other collections that you may have in your stash. It's also got some sentiments on here. This one, hello, awesomeness, you rock, and a little hi on there too. So lots of fun stuff here. We also have the coordinating die set, and that's going to give you all of the shapes, which means that you can do some really fun die cutting and layering. So those are the focus for me tonight. Another element that I'm going to be using is the Friend die. Now this is a nice big die. It's about 2 inches by 3 inches. And this is just one that I use a lot because it can be used for so many things. Now I've got 2 older items here, and these are 2 that I use a lot, which is why they're always kind of at the front of my stash. You can see the packaging that I have here has seen better days, and that's because I do use this set so much. So this is the Sentiments and Quotes, and it's just got lots of really nice small words and sentiments, a nice collection. So you've got everything from missing you to hugs, hello, congrats, you are amazing, you are in my thoughts and prayers, welcome baby. So there's a little something for everybody in here. This can also coordinate really nicely if you're saying like hello, and then you've got friend together. So you can mix and match things together. So that's that set. And finally, I pull it out all the time. It's the framed die collection. You've got the 3 dies in here. I use this a lot. It just never gets put away. And you can see I've even got in my storage folder, I've got all of the die cuts that I didn't use, or maybe I tried it in a different color, and then if you have extras, you can always just pop them back into the bag. So that is what I'm going to be using today for our projects. A couple of other things, I will be bringing in a bit of embossing tonight and some inking, a little bit of watercolor inking, and we can do some fun techniques like this one, for example. So this is with those beautiful retro leaves. I just love the look of that. So that's going to be one example that we're going to be looking at today. But I figure what I can do now is turn down the camera, and then we can jump into just some basic stamping and playing with some of those beautiful Moroccan cutouts. So we're all good to go. Then I'm going to tilt us down. So if you can hang in there with me. There we go. And I think you can see that pretty well. Okay, there we go. Alrighty. So first things first, I'm going to start out once again with our Moroccan Mosaic. And if you guys have not used these before, maybe I'm the only one that's new to them, you'll notice that because they're laser cut, on one side you have a kind of a bright white effect. And then on the other side, it's going to be a little bit tricky to see this. You can really see it quite well close up. There is going to be a kind of, it's a scorch mark because it's cut with a laser. So it's going to have kind of a tinge of antique or just a really soft brown just around some of these edges. I recognize that it can be a bit tricky to see on camera. So just so that you're aware that you have two options to go with this. So what I'm going to do is just grab a piece of white cardstock here, and then I'm going to get my part of my Moroccan piece. Now this is, of course, I've cut into this 12 by 12 piece, and you do have a frame around here, but you can also cut this so that you're able to get a really nice border. And what I'm going to do is just glue this right onto my piece of white cardstock. And I wanted to do this. I know you guys know how to glue things, but I kind of thought it might be helpful to talk about some ways to glue it down. Because it is so intricate, I would definitely not take like a glue stick or something like that to this. I know a lot of folks like to use a spray mount adhesive, which you can certainly do. I tend not to, just because I find that in my very small work area that the smell can kind of linger, and it's not always really easy for me to get outside with things. It rains a lot where I live, so it's not the best way to go all the time. But where you live and what you like to use for your adhesive may be different. I'm just using a plain white glue or PVA glue, and I put a little bit onto this piece of plastic. And here's my very sophisticated tool. I think you can see this. It's a paper clip that has been unwound. I know a lot of glues come with like an applicator, and I always lose them, or they get clogged up, or I just somehow don't use them properly. So this is my tactic here. So I'm just going to be using my paper clip to apply a bit of glue, not all over, but just in some of these areas here. This is how sophisticated it gets. And again, if you have a different gluing option, you know, sometimes we get used to the methods we have. This is just the way I have found it works really well. Okay. And again, I'm not making an effort to cover every area, just kind of going where I know I will need to hold things down. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this facing up. I'm going to take my white cardstock and I'm going to put it down. Okay, like so. And then that way I don't have some big sort of flappy piece that I'm trying to manage. And then what I'm going to do is just let this dry. When it is completely dry, then I'll flip this back over again and just come in with a pair of scissors and trim around the outside edge. So then that way I've got nice smooth edges. But you might also want to just kind of just take a peek and make sure that you've got all of these edges tacked down really well. Like I would go back and add a little bit more glue up here, especially in the corners and along the sides. But it's really important that you have some patience. White glue tends not to take too long to dry. And then just kind of pop this down. Let it dry thoroughly before you do any cutting, so that you don't end up you know, with anything that's shifted or slid off to one side. Okay, and when you're done with that, I've got a piece that is already dry and trimmed. So as you can see, you're going to get a beautiful kind of tone on tone effect. And again, it will be different if you have the kind of, it's almost like a sepia brown. Maybe you can see this a little bit here. I see that Christine's waving. Hi, Christine. I'm glad to see you. You can see a little bit of a sepia tinge around those detail areas. But as you can see, it's just a really nice, simple background. So what I'm going to do is grab my cardstock, my card base here, and I'm just going to pop this down. So I've got some double-sided tape on here already. And we're going to go for kind of clean and simple neutral color palette here tonight. Something a little bit gentle. Okay, I'll get this double-sided tape liner off. And there's not really a right or wrong way in terms of the direction on here, so you can choose which way you want it to go. And then just pop this down. And I've got my card front ready to go. And of course it could go vertically, it could go horizontally, whichever way you decide. So now I've got a really nice background, and I want to add some of my retro flowers on top. So here's where I'm going to grab my Misty. I'm going to set this piece aside, and let's get into some stamping. Okay, I've got too many things here on my work surface. I have to create a little bit of space there. Okay, so I'm working with some smooth white cardstock, and I'm going to choose 3 of my botanical images. This is the one that really drew me to this set originally, so I'm going to start with this one. And then I'm also going to grab this guy here, and I want for balance something darker. So I'm going to use this leaf up here. Now I will suggest, because there's a lot of surface area, especially on these 2 leaves, this one a bit here too, before you use these, do make sure that you can rub an eraser on there, and that will kind of rough this up a little bit and give it some conditioning. And I think I saw a question come through. Was it from you, Sue? You were asking about using the cutouts to stencil with. I have not tried that yet. I was thinking to do some inking on them and do a little bit of coloring with that. So that may be my next option. And that sounds like a lot of fun. I'll be curious when people get, I think it's a fairly new product, so when people start working with it more, I'm going to be curious to see what they come up with. Okay, just need to remove a sequin that has mysteriously gotten stuck onto my stamp. Not sure how that happened. And I'm just going to space these all out here onto my 1 piece of cardstock. And the reason I'm doing this is because I know I want to die cut these elements, so I don't have to worry about grouping them perfectly. Okay, so close up my MISTI, and then here we go. And so I'm going to be using the Obsidian Black pigment ink for this. Now you can use any of your dye inks, any of your pigment inks, whatever you personally like. For nice, crisp black, you can't go wrong with the Obsidian pigment ink. It's just really one of my favorites. One of my favorite inks, and one of my favorite black inks. And I don't think I'm the only stamper who has more than 1 black ink pad. I have several actually, and they all have their purposes, but this one is just a really great all-purpose ink pad. And because it's pigment, it's going to give me a nice rich color. Also means I can use it for embossing if I want to. Okay, I'm going to lift this off and take a look. Crisp and beautiful. I just really love the detail on that. It's gorgeous. And they're fun. They're really nice, kind of light-hearted designs, something modern and retro at the same time. I'm going to clean off my stamps just quickly. And a pigment ink is going to be a little bit more stubborn on your stamps, so sometimes you do need to give them a bit of a scrub when you're using pigment ink. And that's going to give you a little bit of time to, while your stamped images are drying, because pigment ink is a slower drying ink, which you want to keep in mind, of course, when you're handling it, and especially when you're die cutting with it, because the last thing you want to do is pick up that piece of beautifully stamped cardstock and then have it smear when you're putting your dies down. So do make sure that with the pigment ink, you give it a little bit of breathing room. You can also, of course, zap it with your heat tool and speed things up that way. But take a look at how beautifully that stamps. I just adore this. I think that is so pretty. Okay, so then the next part of my process here, I'm going to take my coordinating dies, and I'm just going to pull out one of these so that you can see. So of course, you know, with your cutting dies, you have 2 sides. You've got the side with the cutting edge on it, and you have the smooth side. So when you get ready to do your die cutting, you just pop this down with the cutting side facing into your cardstock. And what I like to do is take a little bit of masking tape or repositionable tape. Make sure you've got it where you want it to go, and then pop it down into place like this. Now you'll notice on here, and it's something that I always remind people of, when you're using tape to hold things down, do make sure that most of your tape is on the outer edge here, rather than putting it so that it's actually on the inner part where your stamping is. And that's because when this goes through your die cutting machine, this paper, the tape can really get firmly attached to your paper and it can tear a little bit. So you don't want it to tear on the inside where you've done your stamping. And then what I will do is just run that all through my die cutting machine. But of course, in the interest of time, I have all three of these elements already die cut. So you're getting just a really fun little accent piece or focal. Okay, so back to my card. And I was thinking I really wanted this to have a nice neutral effect, and so I was kind of playing with putting these down right onto the background piece, and it just seemed to be like it didn't have enough focus on these elements. So what I did was turn to my framed dies, remember the ones that I love so much, and I die cut 2 frames. So I've got the innie and I've got the frame part of it. So I've got this piece is die cut from kind of a cream cardstock, and then I have this cut from the craft cardstock. Okay, so what I can do then is start to play with positioning these elements on here like so. So then I can actually have, you know, a bit of a place to put everything and to create the focus for this focal element. Now, as I'm playing with these things, I'm thinking I probably want to add in a little sentiment. So here's my sentiments and quotes to the rescue. And for this, again, I'm going to be using my obsidian black, and then I'll just pull out one of these sentiments. So maybe I'll have a really little one. It's going to say, hey there. So I'll pop this down, make sure that it's straight, and immediately have black ink on my hands, so I just need to clean that off quickly. And then let's see here. I'm going to go for this area down here. Okay. And there we go. It's a really sweet, very small, perfectly sized. Okay, so clean off my stamp here. And then I'm going to start assembling things onto the front of my card. So I'm going to start with this frame, and I've already got some double-sided tape on here. You could also pop it up on some foam tape if you wanted to. That can work as well. Okay. Get these fiddly bits off. You start to see where this frame die set is just a really great one for creating a little bit of extra kind of presence, if you will. Gives your focal images a nice feature. Okay, so I'm going to put this down here. I know it hurts to cover up some of that beautiful Moroccan cutout, but we'll see how it looks. Okay, and then this guy here. And I'll just nest that right inside. So already I've got a nice focal area. And then what I'll do is start playing with positioning these elements. They don't have to fit inside the frame, but it's kind of nice to have them grouped together like so. And then I can kind of play with this. And what I'll do here, just in the interest of time, once again, I'm going to grab my white glue and just tack down these elements. So you can, again, you can of course use your double-sided tape or your foam tape would be good too. So whatever you have on hand will do the trick. But definitely if you wanted to have some dimension with your foam tape, you could do that. Okay, and then this nice big piece. And we'll kind of overlap these together like so. And if you wanted to, you can also work in a little bit of twine. And that's what I'm going to do, just to again sort of plant the meeting point for all of these elements. So I've got that glued down there. Now here's another little trick that I always like to share. When you're gluing down ribbon or bows, things like that, and you want to have it really firmly in place, sometimes people will put a book on top. I always like to use an acrylic stamping block, because then that way you've got some weight, but you can still see, just in case that wet glue has caused your ribbon or your bow to sort of slide in a different direction. And you know, if it's underneath a book, you can't see it. You lift off the book and it's maybe moved 1/4 of an inch or so. So I always like to put an acrylic block on top, and then that way I can just make sure that everything is in place until that glue dries. But I'll take it off for now so that you can see, first of all, what a quick and easy and beautiful background you can get from that gorgeous Moroccan mosaic. And then also how nicely these elements just come together and how easily they stamp. Okay, so that is our first card project. And I think you can see how nicely they all come together. I really like it with kind of a neutral tone-on-tone effect. But this time we're going to move into some embossing. So I'm going to set this one aside here. And again, I'm going to bring in my Misty, pop down my cardstock, and I'm using some smooth white cardstock for this. And let's see, we'll decide on that third magnet in a second. So now I'm going to come back to my stamp set, and again I'm going to use this element. I'm going to use both of these, and I will also use this piece here. Now I do want to point out that this element has a little top. So this little guy here can actually, let's see, where's the example? Yeah, so that you could have, it's like a little flower and then the leaves on top. So what I'm gonna do is pull off this, 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 and this. Okay, so I'm gonna start with, let's see, I'll start with this one. And if it goes off the edge, that's fine. Okay, so do this one here, and I'll pop this one down here. Can go off the edge. And this is nice because you can kind of scoot your elements around and see where they're going. And then this one we'll put here. And then I always like to sort of move those magnets in so that things are hopefully tacked down really well. So now I want to add my embossing in here, and so I need to have a couple of things on hand. First of all, my embossing powder, and this one is the rose gold embossing powder from Altenew. Of course, I need my heat tool as well. I've got that on hand. I need a piece of scrap paper to catch any of the excess. And remember, I mentioned that your embossing or your pigment ink can also be used as embossing ink, and that's what I'm going to use here. And the reason I'm using this ink in this situation rather than the embossing ink is because when I stamp in black, I can make sure that I've got all of the areas really, really clearly. It's a quick, easy way of just glancing down and making sure that I've got those areas all stamped. So it's just an extra little bit of assurance, I suppose. And because it's a pigment ink, it's going to hold my embossing powder. So it does double duty. And because I'm not using a clear embossing powder, it will still be this beautiful gold. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I've got that all on here. And then just press this all down. Really want to make sure I've got good contact and lift that off. Look how pretty that is. It's beautiful just the way it is. Okay, I'm going to slide these off and keep in mind that everything is a little bit inky. Get my scrap paper here. Oh, it's third grade math. If you wanted to do a little refresher course, there we go. And I'm just going to add my embossing powder on top here. Now, when you do embossing, as you know, you can be pretty generous. You can dump the whole jar on there if you want to. And then just tap off the excess. And I think I mentioned I'm using a smooth white cardstock, so you can see how pretty that is. Now, I also noticed that I've got a couple of little stray bits on here. So before I heat set, I'm going to come in with a dry brush. Just whisk away some of those stray pieces on here. Now, where it can get a little tricky is when you have a little piece of embossing powder like in some areas that are really difficult to get to. So a very fine dry brush will do the trick. My other trick is to use a toothpick. And a toothpick, because it doesn't bend like the paintbrush bristles will, it really does allow you to get into some of those very, very detailed areas and try and whisk those all away. Now I've lost my brush. Okay, so I think we're pretty much good. I'm going to funnel my embossing powder back into my jar here. And all of it goes back in so that I can use it again. Nothing goes to waste. Okay, now what I'm going to do, making sure that I'm working on top of my craft mat, I'm just going to quickly heat set this and then we'll get into coloring. So give me a second and I'll be heat setting. Okay, so you can see how easily that embossed, and that is so pretty. And I think I can see in the reflection that I have gotten pretty much all of the spots on here. It looks like I need another quick zip. There we go, just in the corner. And really, before I do any work with heat embossed images, I always like to give them an extra little tilt, make sure I've got some good lighting, just to make sure that everything is melted before I go in for the next part of the process. And for this, I'm going to do a little bit of painting in. And I'm using 3 green inks. I'm going to be using Parrot, Olive, and Moss. And of course, you can use whatever colors you want. If you want autumn leaves, you could do some darker colors. I might be able to show you that in a little bit as well. I've also got some water on hand, and I have a water brush, and a small paintbrush will do the trick too. So I'm going to move this to one side, and I'm just going to squish on, that's the Parrot. I'm going to squish on some of these colors. That's the Olive, and then let's do this. Here's the Moss. Okay, And for a little bit of variety, let's work in some ocean waves too. Why not? Okay, so I've got all of my colors here, and then I'm just going to mist a little bit of water onto my craft sheet over here in a puddle. I'm not spritzing into these areas because I want to be able to kind of mix and match. So I'm getting my water brush nice and watery, and I'm going to start with my lightest color. And I'm really just filling this in. Of course, the more water you use, the more diluted and the lighter your color will be. So if you want something deeper and darker, use a bit less water and the proportions will be different. Now, I'm not being very careful here, as you can see, because that embossing is kind of holding in any watery medium. So I can go over the lines. I don't have to worry about it smearing like I would if I was doing, if I had done the stamping with a dye ink, for example. So for the most part, this is all parrot. And you can see I'm not being super duper careful about even going to the edges of my lines. I'm just kind of getting some color in. And then I'm going to come over here, I'm going to pick up, I'm not cleaning my brush in between, I'm going to pick up some of the ocean waves, maybe add some teal in some of these areas, mix it up a little, allow those colors to blend. You can do some two-tone effects here. And just see what comes up. See what happens when those colors start to work together. And because I've got some more colors in the works here too, I don't have to worry about things being perfect right now. So I've got some ocean waves, I've got some parrot. We can also bring in a little bit of a darker color. So let's come in with the olive. And again, I'm not cleaning my brush. I'm just sort of re-dipping it into this kind of puddle of water over here. And maybe I want to add this just on half of these leaves. You can alternate some of those sections too. The nice thing about using your dye inks as watercolors is they really are pretty forgiving. Okay, so now I'm coming in with the moss, which is that darker color. I'm going to just go in the center of these cool little leaves. I don't even know what kind of leaves these are. Okay, so that's just to give a bit of a highlight. And come along like so. Okay, let's see, maybe a little bit more down here. But again, this is kind of the magic of working with embossing powder, is that it's going to provide a resist effect. So you'll notice that when I was painting in some of these leaves, I can go back and forth over those edges, kind of smooth this out if I wanted to. If I wanted to blend in a bit more color, I can do that really easily because the embossing acts as a resist. So this is a really fun way to put your dye inks to use, especially if you have lots of different colors and you're maybe sometimes thinking, oh, I don't know that I'm going to be stamping in all of those colors. This is a great way to put them to use. Okay, so I'm going to clean up this from my palette, my craft mat, which so far has been my heat mat. It's also been my painting palette. And you can see it comes in handy. So once you let that dry, and it won't take very long to dry, then you're ready to use it as your background. Now, I think I mentioned I used just a smooth, stiff white cardstock for this. You could also use a watercolor cardstock if you wanted to. So either way is up to you. I just would make sure that it's a nice sturdy weight because you are working with a watery medium. So then here is my finished piece, and I just stamped again that little word hello on here, and then die cut the word friend from black cardstock and pop that on here. Really quick and easy to do, and it's a great technique to have on hand for really any theme of card. So this is a hello friend card, but it could be birthday, it could be thinking of you, could be lots of different themes there. Okay, now speaking of embossing, one thing that I tend to forget a lot, because I'm so often working just as a default with white cardstock, sometimes I forget that you can also use black cardstock for stamping and for embossing. So it was a reminder to myself, and maybe it's a good reminder for you too. Sometimes I just get into a habit of different colors I stamp with or different types of materials I use, and it's always nice to have somebody remind you, like, oh, you know what, you could try that on a different color, try that on a different type of material. So I'm going to bring in some black cardstock here. And I'm not only just doing stamping, I'm going to be doing some heat embossing on here as well. Okay, so I've got my favorite child from the set is this one. And I'm going to pop down my black cardstock on here and secure this down. Now for this one, I am going to use my embossing ink, and once again also using my rose gold embossing powder. Okay, so just close this up, and I'm using a average weight black cardstock here. Okay, and I'm just going to be inking this up with my clear embossing ink. And I'm going to close this up like so and lift this off, and I can see where I've inked that. Okay, I'm going to move this whole thing to one side and grab my recycled math homework. I hope this homework actually got done. And then add my embossing powder on here. Okay. And tap off the excess again. Give a little bit of a tap. I can see here, got some excess. And flip away any extra little bits on here, but take a look. How pretty is that? Now, it's only going to take a second for me to get my powder back into the jar. It's a really important step before doing your embossing. Before you turn on that heat tool, make sure you don't have a pile of embossing powder in front of you, because I can tell you it will go just about everywhere. Okay, get the lid on and give me just a second to heat set this. And then we'll take a look at a card example that's using it. Okay, there we go. I thought I lost him for a second, but look at that. Shiny and beautiful. And I just love the line, the crisp, clean lines on this. I just think it embosses really nicely, and it goes great with the overall design. So what I've done with this is taken my cutting die and I just pop that on top. And then what I can do is add it onto another Moroccan mosaic background. Now you'll notice with this piece here, I don't have it covering the entire front of my card. I just have a little piece of it. And to be totally honest with you, it was a leftover piece from when I was cutting some other projects. So I just glued it down in the same method that I showed you earlier, and only on half of my card. Well, maybe about 2/3. And then I have my die cut embossed element on here. I also have a matching strip that goes across here. That's just applying the embossing powder straight onto cardstock. And then I've got a gold coordinating friend on there. So to do that, all you need to do is literally take your embossing ink pad, squash it onto a piece of cardstock, cover it with your embossing powder, and then heat set it and wait for it to cool, and then you can die cut it. And you'll have a piece that looks like this. And then you can just pop that down onto the front of your card. And again, it's the same with our first card that we looked at. I think it just looks really nice with this collection to have it be kind of a nice soft neutral effect. Okay, so that is our third card. Now I have one more technique that I want to share with you. So I'm going to put this aside and bring back in my Misty, clean this up quickly. I've been kind of tossing this to one side in between. What I want to show you is sort of a watercolor effect. So we're going to go for a completely different look this time. I'm going to move aside my embossing powders and things. And for this one, I am not using my favorite detail stamp. Instead, I'm going to use these three. So the two, I guess they are kind of like oak leaves, and then this polka dot one. I'm just going to pull these off and pop them down onto my cardstock in a really random fashion. I want them to be like falling leaves. Okay, so we'll position these down like so. Get my magnet in place. So it's starting to feel like autumn here in Hamburg, Germany, where I live. Rained and rained and rained the whole past week. So it's been making me think of autumn. Okay, so I'm going to do some autumn leaves here. And for this one, I'm going to use three different colors. I've got the Honey Drizzle, I have Coral Bliss, and I have Ruby Red. This one I'm going to use just a little bit of. I'm also going to bring in the olive too. So I've got just a variety of these colors. And I'm going to keep on hand my water mister. I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is the Honey Drizzle, and just ink those up. And let's see, let's do a little bit of green on here as well. Again, really random, just kind of swishing this on. And then maybe just a bit of the ruby red too. I'll tap that out a little bit. And I'm just tapping with my finger to kind of blur out some of the lines and the edges from my ink pad. And then I'm just going to mist this. So I gave a couple of good spritzes there. And then I'm just going to tap this down. And that's going to give me a really soft and pretty watercolor look. Come back and add a little bit more. And then what you can do is just keep everything in place, keep your paper in place, and maybe add this over here, pop another one down there, and maybe just a corner of this one. And again, rework your magnets. And you might need to dry this off a little bit. And these guys are not staying. Let's see. Ah, there we go. You can see why. Okay, we'll try it again. This one's going to go. This one will. I'm going to make it. Okay. So we'll try this again. just to add a little bit more. Now, once again, add as much color or as little as you want. I like these combinations here. And again, I'm just going to blur this out with my finger a bit. It will also get blurred out by my water. And there we go. My magnets aren't staying in place. There we go. Okay. Now the amount of water you use is going to determine, of course, the intensity of your color and also the shape of your leaves. So if you want a blurrier effect, more water, a crisper effect, then less. And then what you can do is add a little bit of additional color. So I'm going to grab the dark chocolate and just pop a little bit down onto my craft sheet. I'm going to put a little bit of water next to it, and once again pick up that brush, which is not clean from before, but that's fine. Just a little bit of dark green on there at this point, and then tap some of my color on here. Now again, as much or as little as you want to pop on, and then you have a beautiful autumn background. So then just need to let this dry and you are ready to use it on your card front. And I do have a project that is using it again with one of the sentiments from the sentiment stamp set, just cut out and foam taped right on top. And again, another little bit of twine on here. Okay, so that is our fourth card that we've managed tonight. Hopefully you have seen how versatile these cards are. What I'm going to do is clean my hands, and I'm going to tilt up the camera. We can take another quick look at the stamps that I'm using and the dies. So give me 2 ticks and I'll get my things knocked over, unfortunately. Turn up the camera and we can take a look. Okay. Here we go. Hello again. I hope you have enjoyed so far what we've been playing with today. I've got stamps everywhere. I've got dies everywhere. I've got inks everywhere. So hang in there with me and I'll just show you once again one more quick whiz through our products that we're using. And again, you've got a couple of minutes left before we end tonight. So if you are interested in that $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store, do be sure and share. And then let us know how you shared. Jane says, you learned so much today. I'm really glad. That's my goal, is that you are learning and inspired. Okay, so starting with our stamp set, the Retro Plantines. Again, so many beautiful leaves, and I'm really thinking if I'm not the only one who loves autumn and is looking forward to autumn, that this is just a great collection for autumn themed cards. So you've got those. You also have the matching dies, which are always really great for giving you some dimension. Other things we played with, my favorite, sentiments and quotes. I have to get some new packaging for this one. As you can see, it is one that I use a lot. I also was working with that Simply Friend die, which is a favorite of mine. And Altenew has lots of dies that are like this. It's a single word in that beautiful script, and it just makes a card so much easier. Also, the framed dies, an oldie but a goodie in my world. You guys may be sick of me using that one by now, but I always think it's nice to have show examples of some stamps and some dies and some supplies that you maybe haven't used. You maybe have in your stash you haven't used for a while. Okay, and then the biggie, the Moroccan Mosaic Creative Cutouts. This great big 12 by 12 piece, which of course you can cut down and use on your card fronts. So here's another quick look at just matting that onto some white cardstock. Think about it on colored cardstock though too, would be really beautiful. And don't forget you can do some parts and pieces of it. You don't have to use the whole thing. You can use little swatches of it. And there's that gorgeous stamp. I just really love this. It's so simple and so elegant. With the embossing, here's another go with some embossing as well, just to give you another look at how you can use all of those elements together. And of course that big friend die on there too. And last but not least, I'm looking ahead to autumn and the autumn leaves with our watercolor effect. And of course this is done with the dye inks. I used a variety of them, and I know that Orem has been busy popping in the links for all of the inks that I'm using, all of my favorites and more. And then also, of course, my Can't Live Without It Obsidian Black, which I used for just simple stamping as well as heat embossing too. Oh, the embossing powder again, rose gold, a big favorite for me. Okay, so that is going to wrap it up for us tonight. A big thank you to everybody for joining us tonight or today or this morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you to the lovely Orem for keeping us all on track. And I think she was answering a couple of questions in there that I saw just sort of flip by quickly, too quickly for me to read them as I was demonstrating. So I'm sure that Orem has answered your questions. If not, of course, I'll be looking through the comments just to make sure that we've answered everything on there. So a massive thank you to you guys for joining me tonight, and thank you to Orem, and of course a big thank you to Altenew for having us come together like this. Don't forget, we've got live videos. I won't say every night, but almost every night we have them very faithfully. So if you be sure to tune in. We love to have you joining us. And it's great to see so many familiar names and some new friends as well. Okay, you guys, take care. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Good weekend. And I will catch you again later. Okay, take care, guys. Bye-bye.